You know that feeling that you get when you're trying to solve a very complicated problem, like some kind of bug, and you're just 100% in it. You're in that flow state. You're giving it everything that you got. You're making a change. You're trying something. You see an error. You make another change. You get a new error. You're making progress. And then at the end of it, after your final attempts, you finally figure it out and you just want to throw your hands up in the air. You feel like you're on top of the world. I call this the programmer's bliss or the programmer's ecstasy, and I absolutely love having this feeling. But the problem is, I feel like I've been getting this feeling a lot less often lately. And I think it has to do with kind of my waning ability to concentrate on difficult problems for long periods of time. And I know for a fact that I am not alone in this. Sometime between, I don't know, maybe when COVID started or sometime in between then and now, I feel like me and everyone around me, us as a society as a whole, are just losing the ability to concentrate on hard problems, losing the ability to live in a distracted-free world and just be all in on a particular thing. And so for you, that can mean many different things, whether or not your vices are social media or going and checking the news or checking your email. More often than not, it's probably something digital. But for me personally, I found that I would get stuck in these feedback loops where I would be bored with something where I'd have a moment of a break, maybe waiting for a build to finish. And so I couldn't tolerate boredom. I would pick up my phone or check the news. One thing would lead to another. I would look at something else. That would trigger looking at something else. And it's just this wild Ruby Goldberg machine that's just chaining all these events together. And then all of a sudden there's 30 minutes that went by and it's like, what the heck just happened here? And so I've been feeling this for a really long time. And I think a lot of people have been feeling it. We're just losing the ability to focus on hard problems, losing the ability to concentrate deliberately. And these devices, these programs, these apps, they're hijacking our brains so that we just are drawn to them. We are using them for as long as possible and for as often as possible. And this is something that I've been trying to solve personally for myself. It's something that I realized was an issue. And in the past couple of years, I've been looking for ways to tackle this. The first thing that I tried was meditation. Everyone was talking about meditation and being more mindful in a COVID society. We need to spend time with ourselves. We need to think about kind of what's happening in our brain, why things are happening. But I tried this and this didn't work with me. Meditation just isn't something that I'm naturally attracted to, although maybe it worked for you. And so I'm not sure when I got introduced to this resource, which is actually the subject of today's video, but I think it's somewhere in between a friend recommending some books to read and Amazon's auto recommendation algorithm giving me something that was useful. And so that's when I stumbled upon this book. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport, which is an excellent resource if you care about rebuilding your ability to concentrate on complicated problems. And I will say I'll put a link to this down in the description, the comment section of this video. It's an affiliate link, doesn't cost you anything, but it does help me out in this channel. But this book goes into, in detail, basically the things that I was just describing to you now, which is that we as a society, we are losing our ability to focus deeply on hard and complicated topics. We are being drawn to all these distractions in the world, whether or not they're digital, or whether or not they're on our phone, or whether or not they're in our physical world as well. We just are losing the ability to concentrate for these really long periods of time that are necessary to make academic or professional advancement. And so I don't want to spoil too much of the book for you. I do highly suggest you pick it up and read it just because it's honestly changed the way I look at concentration. I'm applying a bunch of the principles in the book and including an important one, which is called time block scheduling. But anyways, to give you kind of a brief kind of overview of some of the things that are included, maybe this will give you an idea if you want to go out and get it, but not go into too much detail. So Cal makes this distinction of deep work versus shallow work, where deep work is, and I'll actually read out to you the definition here, which is it's a professional activity that is performed in a distraction-free concentration that pushes your cognitive abilities to the limit. And this can include things like writing an academic paper, reading a book or an article. For us, we're programmers, so it could be programming or designing a application architecture, anything really where you really have to spend long periods of time with dedicated focus. And the thing with deep work is that a lot of people think that it's just something that you have or you don't, being able to focus on things. But what really resonated with me in this book is that the ability to concentrate isn't something that you just have or don't have. It's something that can be improved upon with deliberate practice over time. And so if you feel like you are losing the ability to focus and concentrate, then you're not alone on this, but this book kind of gives you tips on ways that you can overcome these challenges and practice concentrating. And so deep work was kind of what I just described. This is in contrast to shallow work, which is usually more logistical style work. It could be like organization. For me, it could be like doing email or editing a video, for example. This is stuff that doesn't require a lot of cognitive thinking. It's just logistical style stuff that you have to do. And then finally, there's just distractions, which is stuff that you definitely shouldn't be doing. You're just burning your time. And so, so he discusses that deep work takes deliberate practice. It's something that can be built over time. So he talks about a bunch of different ways to achieve deep work. It could be through things like rituals, like waking up in the morning and first thing that you do is go for a walk. When you come back, you do deep work for a couple hours. Could be things like certain times of the day, like in the afternoon, every day at 12 o'clock, every Wednesday at 9 p.m., something like this. You can build that around into your schedule. He also, which I thought was particularly interesting, is that he references certain historical figures like Teddy Roosevelt, for example. He also talks about Lincoln in another book, but just how they perform deep work by analyzing their behavior and their habits. And what's cool here is that he gives you different styles of doing deep work. There's certain types that are just completely invested. You basically just go to a cabin in the woods with no distractions, anything like that. There's other forms which are more realistic in modern society, which are like whenever you have free time, which is more applicable if you have kids or you have a family or whatever. But it gives you different options to perform this deep work so that you can find one that fits with your schedule and your preference. Also talks about practicing these long bouts of concentration and ways to create forcing functions for you to deliver on a certain day, which is very helpful. And then finally, the most important one, which is probably the one that most of you are not going to like, which is reevaluating your relationship with social media. So things like Reddit, things like Instagram, checking the news, even email these days. Hacker News is popular among, I'm sure, many of you. But just reevaluating when you use, how you use, why you use these things, and making a conscious decision on how you're going to use them or whether or not you're going to use them in the future. So again, this book by Cal Newport, Deep Work, is honestly one of the most important books that I've read probably in the past 10 years. I highly suggest you read it. I also went out and bought all of his other books too. So I've already read a couple of them. So Good, They Can't Ignore You. This one is excellent. This one too, Digital Minimalism. This is more of reevaluating social media. And this is his most recent one here, which is A World Without Email. I'm eager to get to this one. And just one final tip. One thing that I do hear from people often is that, they get into these new habits, they get into these new kind of regimes that they want to follow, and then they lose it after a little while. So something that I've been doing to improve my ability to keep with this, because I do think it's so important in order to personally excel, is that I've made it a habit now. So he also has a podcast. So I made it a habit. So every day I go for around a half an hour walk, and he's been doing this podcast for like 3 or 4 years. So there's something like 300 episodes or so. And so I listen to a section of his podcast every day when I go for a walk. And this just kind of keeps this deep work mentality with me and makes sure that if I ever have a period where I'm waning and not really sure if I want to do this anymore, I can get inspired again and just keep on getting to it. So again, this is Deep Work by Cal Newport. I'll put the link to the book in the description section below and in the comments. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.